Everyone, welcome to the We Ship It podcast. Today we're going to be doing something a bit different. We're talking our first TV ship.
Yes, this is going to be amazing. We'll be discussing Nick and Jess from New Girl. This on-again, off-again couple is super passionate, and we're excited to get chatting on whether or not we ship it. So listen and find out.
Hey everyone, I'm Steph.
And I'm Devin.
And welcome to the We Ship It podcast. This is episode 3, and we're discussing Jess and Nick from New Girl. This couple kept us on our toes watching each season. The will they, won't they? I, for one, love to follow it. It was crazy to watch.
Yeah, they were just such a fun couple to watch. We love Nick and Jess. Just a warning, if you haven't watched the entirety of New Girl, there may be a spoiler or two, as with most of these podcast episodes, but as this is less of an all-time classic, we wanted to make sure we noted that before beginning.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So let's dive right in with our questions.
Let's
talk
do it.
Nick and Jess.
Yay!
Okay, so the first question we have is kind of an all-encompassing opener. So why these two? Why does the audience root for them despite all odds?
I would have to say it's probably like they're just the people that they are, the characters that they are. Their sense of fun and witty banter, their chemistry is just magnetic, and they have, like I said, the media chemistry that it's almost contagious for the viewers. The audience is captivated by these two and their goofy, polar opposite way of thinking, their relationship, and watching their story play out. Do the two of them make sense? Yes and no. Jess even admits in a talk with her dad in one of the later seasons that there isn't, and this is quote, there isn't a logical explanation. But it is what it is. I love him. I wish I didn't, but I do. So there's really no reason as to why their connection is so strong, but they defeat all the odds, and at the end of the day, they stand together as one. So I just appreciate, like, there's no rhyme or reason as to why they fit, but it's magical when they do.
I love that because so many relationships, there really aren't a rhyme or reason, but I think we're going to dissect a little bit more the few reasons that I think that their relationship does well.
Oh, totally.
So for my part, I think the reason that these two hold such like an important piece of our hearts is because of the buildup. I think the buildup has something to do with it, you know. And I think there's something to that classic cynical guy / quirky girl and the will they, won't they get together. And, oh, they have these little moments where they're like very passionate about each other and you can see it, but they can't see it. It's just something we all love really deep down. And that's something that really kept me watching, kept me captivated with, was like kind of just really wanting them to get together. And the show did a really good job of building it up.
Oh,
and also,
totally.
I'm not really sure how to describe this, but there are just some shows, and they're more often the shows that stick with us most, that create this obvious, these two belong together storyline. And I don't know how it's developed. I don't know exactly what it is that they do to make it so, but other than, you know, adding a few cute moments here or there. But I think this is one of those shows. It's just clear from the very beginning to me that Nick and Jess belong together from like the first episode.
100%.
And it just, yeah, and I think they also offer like non-problematic drama. So this show in general is just something that's easy to watch and it's lovable. And that's what makes them and the show just so tempting to everyone, you know?
It's so binge worthy. It's easy
Yes.
to get into it, and it's easy to just relax and appreciate the characters on the screen.
Yes, I've watched this show more times than I should probably admit on this podcast.
Love it. But you're right. I would love to dive in and see how writers create the story, the plot lines for their characters. Like, okay, they have great characters, and now they have to build up relationships that keep the audience motivated to join them along the journey. So I think that's really interesting. I would love to visit that and see like how writers go about doing that.
Right, me too. I just love that. It should be a study. We should do a study of
Yeah.
like what it is that makes these couples so lovable and watchable.
Cool. All right. So the next question. What are your favorite Nick and Jess ship moments? And maybe some of your not so favorite.
Well, I have a few. I love these two. Okay, I'll give you my I have a lot of them honestly, but I just picked a few. one of my first all-time favorite episodes is one that, I made you watch the other day. The birthday episode when
Yes.
Nick, it's like the first time they're together on Jess's birthday, and Jess is just, she so over dramatizes birthdays in general. And Nick kind of fails at providing her a birthday surprise during the day because he knows that like he's doing a party later, but he doesn't realize that she's going to expect something. And then
Hmm.
she ends up going to the movies like she always does. And he shows up at the movies with everyone they know. And he shows this beautiful video, all of them talking about how much they love Jess. And it was so sweet. I
It is really
literally,
cute.
I just die inside when I see it. It's so great. And then my second favorite moment, and this is a bit cliche, but honestly, is their first kiss. Their first kiss had been building for so long, and I have to be real, it's by far one of my favorite first kisses of all time. And that's with like
Really?
all literature, like all these classic stories. Their first kiss looks so real. It is just it just makes me like crazy when I watch it. I sometimes will just replay it a couple times.
And Nick's line there too. What does he say? Um,
He says, I meant something like that
yes,
because they had
because
just been
yep.
joking about being like kissing each other, and everyone was telling them, "Oh, kiss, kiss, kiss," because
And I
that
don't want to
game.
do it like that.
Yes,
I don't want to
yes,
be that way. And
it's
he's
like
like,
my
I meant something
favorite.
like this. And I'm like, yes, Nick, yes.
Yes, get it, Nick, get it. So what are some of your favorites, and then I'll dive into like my not so.
Okay, so we'll do bounce back and forth. All right.
Hmm.
So surprisingly, I chose different ones than you. I
What?
was, I was kind of like, I think I know which one she might choose, so I'm gonna try and go
Again,
move
yeah,
away from
different
this.
ones.
One of my favorite moments is when Nick builds Jess the dresser, the dresser that she needs, despite being advised by Winston not to do it. So Winston
Yep.
says like, "You will not build her that dresser. It's furniture. It implies that one day you will share it with her." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, do it, Nick, do it." So
I
like
love it.
he gets advised not to do it, and he's like, "Eh, it's something that I want to do, and it would be a good moment. Like it's just like a good friend moment for him." So he does it anyways, with no like benefits in mind. And she even says like, "Don't do it, Nick." And then she's like, "But it's something I like to do. It's something I enjoy." So he does it, and I really appreciate that. Um,
Nick.
Another moment that I enjoy is when Schmidt says that he is going to try and sabotage their relationship. Nick and Jess decide to tell each other stuff that could potentially hurt them and make them break up. So I think it's interesting that they aren't afraid to lay themselves out on the table and
Right.
explain their deepest fears or the problems that they have about themselves or whatnot. They're just able to put it all on the table and just say like, accept me for who I am, which I think is really cool.
I love that about them. They're so
And my
real.
last favorite moment
Oh, you
is
have
when
three,
I
Devin.
do
Get
have to.
out.
This one you
Get
can't like
out.
not mention. When Nick races to the loft to tell her that he loves her in the season 6 finale,
Yes, you mean the
their kiss in the elevator, that was a good
yes.
one. When they're
A
like,
great friggin' moment.
when she like locks herself out of the apartment and she manages to get in, but he goes down outside and they switch and then they meet each other in the elevator. Just like a cute, it's a build up moment and it's really solidifies their relationship. So I think
This
that's
show does
like
so
awesome.
well with build up
Oh
moments.
yeah,
They really freaking do.
they know what they're doing.
Um yeah, so then to go into some of my not
You
so
not favorite?
favorites.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, I'm sad to bring it up because ultimately I love their couple ship, whatever you want to call it. But I have some trouble sometimes with different things that happen. One of the things is when they're not in a relationship, they spend time together trying to get the other person laid. And maybe like I don't know if you remember this, but there's a whole thing where like Jess, they're ex couples, and Jess is taking Nick
Mm-hmm.
out to be like his wing woman. And to me, it's like that's just not something that ex couples would do for one another. Like
Yeah, it
obviously they're
feels
doing it
weird.
because they're in denial, and she just wants to get over it and blah blah. But it just feels weird to me, and it just feels like not really healthy to me. And another thing I don't like is when they run away to the beach after Cece and Schmidt's wedding. Now I don't
Mm.
know if you recall this, but I just thought it was weird. It didn't really allow them to break into the real world as a couple. And it just felt like they were running away from stuff, and it didn't feel like the healthiest version of Nick and Jess that we see later. Um, And then lastly, the whole engagement thing really bothered me. How Nick takes
The
like
proposal?
forever. No, the proposal is nice. He takes like forever to do it, and then he like gets all upset that the first version doesn't work out. So he just like
Mm.
waits again, and I'm just like, Nick, get over yourself. You should have done it when you were in Europe, bro. But so those are my like not so favorite moments.
Okay.
Okay. What do you think, Buh?
So, mine kind of really had to deal with their breakup. So, Nick and Jess realize that the only thing that they have in common is that they love each other, and they admit that they miss each other as being friends. So they decide to break up. But during that time in the show, Schmidt is living in Jess's room because Jess and Nick moved in together. So
Right.
they have to remain living together in the room despite the fact that they are broken up. So I just feel like it would be so difficult to have that happen in real life. I don't know. I feel like it would just be almost torture like to have to wake up and pretend. And they even go through and pretend that they are still together, just so that there's not an awkward atmosphere in the loft. So I just think that that's kudos to them, but it's also like such a hard moment to see them both go through that together.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it either, obviously, because it's them
Hmm.
breaking up. But moving on to question 3, because it kind of jumps off of that. Do you
Hmm.
think their breakup was necessary for them as a couple? What do you think, Devin?
So for me, yeah, I do. I think they needed some space to reevaluate themselves and their relationship. There's that time old saying that says you never realize what you have until it's gone. Well, that's the same case here. They didn't believe they could work together as a couple, so they needed to see if they could work apart. They needed to be separated, which, as stated above, they do not. They are not able to. Being just friends only made them realize how much they do, in fact, work as a couple and love each other. Being just friends only made them realize how much they do, in fact, work as a couple and love each other. Their breakup made themselves and their relationship stronger. Even though it was painful to part and just as difficult for their audience to watch, but I think it was necessary to see them break away and then realize, like, oh yeah, I do still have feelings for this person. I do still want to be with this person regardless of everything that we would have to overcome.
Yeah, I love that analysis. Mine's a little bit less like in depth. But truly in the moment it didn't seem necessary to me. I was like, why are they breaking up? This is the
Right.
stupidest reason for someone to break up I've ever heard.
Hmm.
But seeing, later when we watched Nick get with Reagan, seeing that he had some growing up to do kind of made me realize that it actually may have been necessary. I think the two of them, more than like they just needed to be friends again, I think they just needed to grow. Like Jess pretty well grew, but I think she had to grow into understanding who Nick was as a person and accepting that.
Hmm.
Um, and Nick just had to grow as a person, like fully, generally. He just had to grow as a
I
person.
love Nick
Um,
though.
I
No,
love
but
him
I do agree.
too.
He
Oh, I
doesn't
love him
understand
too.
the mature nature of a relationship. He didn't understand that at
Exactly.
first.
Exactly. So he had to grow. But at first, when they first broke up, I was like, this is so stupid. But so I understood it over time. So I think the writers did a really good job of confusing us and then explaining kind of why it was necessary in the end.
So our next question, was Nick and Jess's wedding the one you saw for them?
Absolutely not. And okay, this may just be me, like my opinion. This may have been the best wedding for these two weirdos, but to me, this episode felt like a rush episode. Now, that's outer world talk, right? That's not like in world, like Jess and Nick talk. This is like the writers talk. But I truly think that this episode felt rushed to me. It felt like they just needed to get these two married and just did whatever they could about it. I think, maybe their wedding should have been a little quirky, but not weird and not a failure of a wedding. Like, I feel like the whole point of it was just watching them fail at everything. And then Jess was like, oh, would it have been anyone else's wedding, like, if we didn't fail? And it's just like, no, it's not supposed to fail. It's supposed to be funny. But so it just didn't make me feel great about their future. And I think it did very little fan service. But you may have a different opinion. I don't know, Devin. Go for it.
I don't think it was even possible to see this wedding coming. Did it meet my expectations of what I wanted for these two? Not exactly. This wedding was not perfect in our society standards of what a wedding should be. No one would have seen this wedding as like, that's the kind of wedding I want to have.
Right.
But it was their perfect wedding. They only needed it to be
Oh,
them and their
Devin,
friends
get
and
out of
family
here.
who have supported them through it all. Like that's all they needed. They're
Yeah.
not this big showy couple. They're not this big like we need to go out and celebrate kind of couple. They really just needed it to be themselves and have it be intimate. Do I feel gypped as a viewer? I mean, yeah, maybe a little, but this is what was perfect for them. It mattered, like it was their perfect ending in a sense. Do I agree with it? Meh, yes, no, I don't know. But like it was their moment for themselves.
Devin, we sort of disagree, but
I
I'll
know.
allow it. You at least have a good reason for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, next question.
Yeah.
So let's compare their relationship to their ex relationships. So what are the good, bad, and ugly in comparison?
Okay. So what I did was I looked at one particular relationship that of one of their past ones. And kind of like analyze why it was not working out or why it wasn't necessarily a good one. So for Jess, one main relationship that comes to mind is Dr. Sam. The turmoil that this relationship put Jess through was difficult to watch. The relationship was just not as strong as what Nick and Jess have. It was
Mm-hmm.
originally just supposed to be a fling for Jess, meaningless sex with no add-ons. So I never truly bought into this relationship as it continued to be developing.
Oh, we're
Um,
gonna disagree.
while I like the development of Sam from an analytical perspective and the layers he offers the audience from like a closed off dude to finding out who he is as a scarred individual from a heartbreak to finally understanding what he wants and going after it. Like I understand his development as a character, but Sam never fit into the picture for me with Jess. I just never saw it as like a good thing. Um, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't necessarily see the full element of a couple there. So that's
Mm-hmm.
Jess. For Nick, on the other hand, one of his worst relationships was with Caroline, in my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Here it always felt like it was just a one-sided relationship. He was madly in love with her, but for Caroline, Nick was just not her top priority. She keeps him on the back burner, toying with his emotions, and Nick Miller is too good to be anyone's backup plan. So that's why I was like, that
True.
I don't like that. I hated that he was
True.
hurting himself to try and fall in love with someone. So
Yeah, and so as far as like my response to this, there are characters that I really just put on the back burner and said like these don't matter. Caroline was one of them. I mean,
yeah.
she showed a lot of Nick's development in her being a character at first, but then in the end she just didn't end up sticking with me. And then, Jess had Ryan, that British guy. He was sort of bland, and Paul,
What?
I could not. Yeah, I
I
did not
disagree.
like
Okay, we'll get to
Ryan.
that later.
He
Continue
was
though.
just like a piece of butt for her. And I was
Nope.
like, stop it. A piece of butt with a good accent. Um, but and Paul, I don't even really remember the guy other than the weird Thanksgiving that he was there for. But
mm,
so I kind of did the same thing. The two couples that I thought like were the least terrible for them that weren't like Nick and Jess themselves. Nick with Reagan. This is the least terrible relationship he had, but they were terrible for each other. Reagan really didn't give a crap about the things that Nick cared about, and it was completely obvious. And they did a really good job of showing the dichotomy of the way Jess cared about him and the way like Reagan did not care about him. But I think that that is one of the relationships that he was most mature and maybe most
okay.
like liked her.
Right.
Um, and it affected him most. And then Jess with Dr. Sam, like you said. So I actually think they were a good match in the beginning. When they brought him back as a weird hippie, I thought that was weird. And then they started to make this whole thing about how Jess was like a stalker or whatever. And it was funny, like very funny for the comedy side of this show. But I thought it was weird and unhealthy. And like, I think the only reason they really did it was to make Jess and Nick's relationship look a little bit better.
Okay.
Because Nick and Reagan were actually terrible for each other. Whereas I think Dr. Sam and Jess had a lot of appeal. And they were actually two really deep characters who could have made it work if they were both healthy people. But obviously,
Okay.
I think Jess and Nick were better than Jess and Dr. Sam. But I think Dr. Sam gets a bad rap here. Like, I just think people don't appreciate him enough. Yeah, sure, they started out, just wanting sex from each other. But at the same time, I think that they both actually developed real feelings for each other, and then the weird hippie phase came, and I was just not a fan. But yeah, so I think that's those are the two main ex relationships, I would say.
Okay, we'll part.
We'll agree to disagree.
All right, next question. If they didn't end up together, Nick and Jess, who do you think they should have been with?
No one. No. I'm kidding. Well, I mean, I'm not really kidding. But so if I had to pick, I would say Jess with original Sam, not with weird hippie Sam, which you're probably going to disagree with me. And I would say Nick and Reagan, because Reagan's the only one that didn't like literally try to kill Nick at points. And we didn't really talk about this one girl he was with. I don't even remember her name, but remember he like didn't understand her irony. Do you remember this girl? She was so weird. We
I
won't
don't
even get
remember.
into it.
I remember
It was
the
just
one.
like,
I remember trans granddaughter
oh, I forgot about her. I
when
just
they
feel like all these
when they
different.
thought that she was homeless, but she was really actually like really rich.
Yes. And honestly, like I appreciated her character actually. Like I really did. I forgot about her. Maybe we'll have to talk about her more.
Yeah.
But so I think Jess and original Sam and then Nick with Reagan, if I had to pick for him. I think like I think he as a person could get over her not caring about his work, but it wouldn't be healthy for him.
I agree.
So that's where I'd go with that. What about you?
For me, I said Jess and Ryan.
Mm,
I know you're going to disagree.
boo.
I know.
Boring.
So I always found Ryan to be the second best match for Jess. Their chemistry was just perfect, and they were both in the same profession, so we knew that they meshed well together.
Mm.
Did the relationship move too fast, and did she jeopardize her job to be with him? Yeah, okay, sure, but like they just fit so well together. They were
But he was a
dealt
jerk in the end.
that. I don't think that was. I disagree with the writers because I don't think he would. I don't think his character would have made that decision to not show up.
I agree.
They were just dealt with difficult cards, and I think that they played them well. Unfortunately, long distance across the pond did not work out for them. So
Long distance is hard for anyone.
yeah, but I appreciate like I don't know. It was just like really out of the blue relationship, but I was like, I see so much potential in here, and I want this to happen, but it never like really came back in fruition.
I
So
guess I feel that. I'll appreciate your
for
analysis.
Nick, I agree. Reagan was the next pick for him. Um, I just see like they allowed themselves to be normal with each other and not put up
Hmm.
fronts. They like when she came back at Cece and Schmidt's wedding, she came back for Nick to be with Nick, and she was nervous and he was nervous, and Nick was like, "Go talk to Reagan for me," and Reagan was like, "Go talk to Nick for me." So and then
Hmm.
so then they finally managed to get together. So sure, Reagan had her faults in not wanting to talk about the relationship or pursuing her job over Nick, but I think that if they would have put more time into it, it would have worked out overall. Like they just needed to
Yeah,
get over that barrier.
I think so too. They definitely had flaws that they wouldn't have gotten over, but I think there were some flaws they could have gotten over, for sure. Okay, so our next question. What are the characteristics of each, Jess and Nick, that make their relationship so good or bad, depending on what you feel?
So I'll go through each of them separately, I guess. Nick is a complete goofball, but he is charming and caring in his own way. Like
Yeah.
he is constantly there to support Jess and even faces his own fears in order to be there for her. So
Hmm.
I really see him grow in his love for Jess, like through his character development, through his he's able to conquer some of his own fears, some of his own like problems with himself in order to be there for Jess to support her. Um, Even when they are apart, Nick is protective of Jess and doesn't want anything bad to happen to her. He wants the best life for her, regardless of whether or not that means that he's in it with her. And Nick was fearful of what would happen to the relationship. He was so in his head until he made that moment like, screw it. Let's not think about it. Let's just let this happen. It was all in his head. He was doubting himself. And throughout the entirety of the show, he always doubts himself and his abilities.
Yeah.
Um, so I really feel for Nick in those situations. Jess, on the other hand, is so cheerful and optimistic. So they kind of like balance each other out in those regards. So it's hard not to wish the best for her. Nick even tells her dad, um, and this is a quote, "She's got that giant heart that's part compass and part flashlight." So he
Oh.
just like feels safe around her, and it's a really cool moment. Like he's on the phone with her dad, and he's just like he realizes the light bulb goes off. Like, oh my gosh, I like her.
Yeah,
So
finally.
it's really cool. They're both just irrational in their own way, which I think is interesting. Like, for example, Jess with adopting the dog without asking
Yes.
Nick, and Nick is irrational in his own ways with practically anything else. So I just the two mesh so well together. So I think it's really cool to see how their characters develop with each other through the show. Like they grow as a couple throughout the show.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And so as far as like Jess, I think that she cares a lot about things.
Oh
And when it
yeah.
comes to Nick, he cares very little about many things. You know, there are those few things that he does care about a
Hmm.
lot, but she cares a lot about every little
She's
thing.
such a
And
planner.
she is. She cares so much. And she bring what I think that does is it brings other people to better understand themselves. You know, like
Hmm.
Cece, like Schmidt, like she just weasels her way into their hearts and she shows them who they are and helps them to be who they are. And that's what's important with her and Nick because she does the same thing for Nick. And he really needs that out of all the characters that she knows because he doesn't really appreciate himself. So
Right.
she helps him to appreciate himself and to live well. And she just makes life fun, you know? And then like Nick, obviously, it's harder to extract more the obvious ways that Nick makes Jess's life better because well, I don't know why because, but it just was for me harder to pinpoint it. But basically, Nick helps Jess take life less seriously. And he pushes her to take risks that she would not take, I don't think, without him,
Hmm.
which is really important because Jess is quirky, but she's uptight. So he kind of helps her out of that. And I kind of agree with what you said. While Nick is kind of lazy, he is a protector. He is a protector like you
Yeah.
would not believe. And he's a protector from before they're together all the
Hmm.
way till after they're broken up, till after they're married. Like he's just a protector. And it's a great thing because it's what I think
It's
Jess
not
needs
just with Jess either. It's with anyone that he
with anyone.
encounters. Yeah. So I think that's
Yeah.
really cool. He
He
knows how
has
to
really
stick up for the people
great
that he loves.
Yeah, he has really great characteristics that don't show themselves as obviously as Jess do because Jess is bubbly and
Hmm.
people just are attracted to that. Nick is like more cynical and a little like hard to grasp at times, but I think that he is a very deep and loving person. Just
Oh,
someone that like
100%.
it takes a little bit less or it takes a little bit more deep diving.
You have to really see through like his facade that he puts on as like this down in the dumps kind of guy. Just really
Mhm.
see through to his heart.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. So, is their relationship vital to the show? In other words, could New Girl have existed without it?
Interesting. Um, in part yes, and in part no. As we said, Nick fell in love with her the moment he saw her, the moment she walked
Hmm.
into the loft. So we know there was going to be something between them. And let's be honest, we love these two. But I don't think the show's success centered around this couple. The show existed through around the friendships built within the walls of the loft. It doesn't just focus on Nick and Jess. It focuses on Schmidt. It focuses on Winston. It focuses on Cece and Allie and all the other relationships that are involved throughout it. So each relationship is a crucial piece to making New Girl what it is slash was. The character development is what makes the show so lovable, which we already talked
Hmm.
about. Like they did so well in creating these lovable characters that each one is special in their own mind.
I agree. I think New Girl would have fallen a little flat for me without Nick and
Without it,
Jess
okay.
specifically. I could have watched it. I think so. It's a comedy, right? It's a sitcom, so it's enjoyable no matter what. But I think it
Mm-hmm.
would have been shorter, and I think it would have been a little bit less drawing and appealing if it didn't have them in it. Mainly because it focuses so much on Jess's love life that I think it needed an end. Her love life needed an end. It needed someone who perfectly matched her, and I think it was one of the main arcs, in my opinion, was their relationship because it kept drawing us to watch more. At least in my opinion, it did. And the show comedically is genius. It's very hilarious. There are some sitcoms that you just get bored and it's not as funny, and you focus solely on the relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I think this show is funny enough it could have existed as a comedy in itself, but it wouldn't have been New Girl if it didn't have Jess and Nick as one of the central focal points.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that their relationships their relationship really defined like what I thought of when I thought of New Girl. Like obviously there's Cece and Schmidt, which we're gonna have an episode on them too. There's Cece and Schmidt. There is Winston and Allie, who oh my god, I love them.
Me
Literally,
too.
I love them so much. But I think Jess and Nick just had something in their relationship that attached itself to me and a lot of people based on the fan fiction world.
Mm. I'm sure.
But yeah, so that's really where I fall on
Cool.
that.
Yeah, I agree. I
Hmm.
don't think it was vital, but I definitely see the importance of it and the
Definitely.
reasoning behind it. So yeah, I agree. Next question. What values do we take from New Girl? From both the show and from the relationships within it as a whole?
Yeah, so definitely to respond to that question, I would say New Girl, it really focuses on relationships, like you were talking about before. The beautiful thing about it is we watched these, like, what was it, five, like at different times it was different because Coach would come in or like
Mm-hmm.
Winston would come in. These different broken people who came together under one roof. And they were all kind of broken from different things. You know, Jess had just been cheated on. Nick just kind of like was cynical about the world. Schmidt was kind of a douche, honestly.
Mm,
And all of them made each other better. And I think that is one of the aspects of New Girl that I really love. And obviously, it's a sitcom, so one of the main values of it is its humor.
right.
But if we're gonna go in depth on it, community and how community can help you grow as a person, and how other people can help you grow as a person is something that I think New Girl really does well to show.
Yeah, I
Um,
love that.
yeah, and I think so. Nick and Jess really do justice to this as well because these two parts of a whole came together and just made each other whole, and that's what relationships are all about, and not just like love relationships,
Mm-hmm.
like girlfriend boyfriend relationships, but also just like all relationships. We kind of make each other whole in that way, and that's what New Girl really meant to me.
I love that. And my little spiel after this will kind of like key right into that.
Mm-hmm.
So my main piece is going to come from a quote. So I'll read it out. You of all people know, and this is coming from Nick. You of all people know I'm just the weird detour you take before you find the guy you want to be with. And then Jess immediately jumps in on him. Stop it, Nick. I'm tired of you being the only person who doesn't see how incredible you are. So like that piece just kind of embodies their relationship. He's
Mm-hmm.
always doubting himself, and she always sees the light within him. Yes, he's cynical. Yes, he kind of goofs off about things, and he's not as organized or he's not as caring about certain pieces. But he doubts himself so much, and he doesn't understand what life he brings to other people. So going off of what you said, like yes, I totally agree. Like the whole show focuses on how you can help someone else be the better person today, which I just love that.
It's beautiful. I love
Hmm.
New Girl. It's not only funny, but I think it has really good values, and that's what I enjoy about it. But one of our, what is this? The second to last question is going to be: how do you feel about the time jump from season 6 to 7?
Okay. So overall, I think season 7 was a disservice to the viewers.
Me
Um,
too.
they start with a huge time jump of 3 years, and each episode following is the audience trying to savor each moment of the end, but also try and figure out like what has happened over the hiatus. The episodes themselves also jump time, specifically their proposal to their wedding and the following. Like they go from the proposal in one episode to their wedding in the next one. So it's just like a huge jump of time in each one. And part of me wonders if it would have been better to just leave it at the end of season 6 with them in the
I
elevator
think it
kissing.
would have. I
Um,
think it would have.
but I do appreciate the writer's attempt to give the audience what they want with the hoops that they had to jump through. Um, I don't know. I liked having it to kind of like bring it all together, but I also just wish they would have done it better.
Right. 100%. And I'm just like I thought it was kind of cool when Jess and Nick came back and they weren't engaged and they did the whole thing
Mm-hmm.
where she pulled out her finger and it was broken. It didn't have like a ring on it,
Mm-hmm.
which was really funny at first. I think season 7 just drug on. I was like,
It's
okay, like
only eight
obviously I
episodes, but
want
it
them to
felt
get
a lot
married.
longer.
It did. I was like, obviously I want to see them get married, but like, I don't know. Like we didn't need this. I thought it just left us on such a good note when they were in the elevator kissing, like
Mm-hmm.
you said. Um But, I mean, I can't complain for more content versus less. I
Right.
just didn't really love it.
Hmm.
I think that a lot of people have opinions on that.
Yeah, I'm
I
sure.
think we're not the
Please let
only
us know how you
ones.
feel about that because we
Yes,
are not
please.
satisfied
We're
apparently yet.
not satisfied. Okay,
All
so
right.
Devin, roll in with our last question.
Yeah. So our last question is, do we ship it?
Do we ship it? Oh my gosh. Well, so as far as I go, yeah, I totally freaking ship
Yes,
it.
obviously.
Yes. And so there are some flaws and weird moments, but I think it's totally normal for a relationship to have those weird moments because you grow from them. And this
Hmm.
relationship just gives me the feels like nothing else. I don't know, Devin, if you feel the same, but it definitely
I
is a
100%
ship for
agree.
me. Yes. Okay, cool. Well, you guys let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you. If you
Yeah.
disagree or if you agree, feel free to reach out to us at I keep doing that, at weshipitpodcast@gmail.com.
So we've now come to one of my favorite parts, where we read some comments from the audience. We only had one audience member write in, but man, was it a great analysis. So take it away, Steph.
Yes, I love it. Okay, so this is from Kately, and Kately actually sent us two pieces of information. She sent us a paragraph on Nick and Jess and on Schmidt and Cece, so we're going to be using that
Ooh,
later too. Thank you so much, Kately, for writing in. I'm so excited.
me too.
Um, okay, so this is what Kately wrote. Steph and Devin, thank you so much for including the awesome romances of Nick and Jess and Cece and Schmidt in your podcast. As a lover of New Girl, I've had conflicting feelings about whether or not I ship these relationships. Please see below my thoughts on each. As far as Nick and Jess, first off, it's hard not to ship these two from the beginning. It is clearly from early on in the season that Nick's inevitable attraction for Jess is there. Attraction that goes oftentimes unnoticed by Jess's naive self.
Hmm.
Jess also loves Nick, but not by mere attraction. She loves him completely as a person. Even the parts that are hard to like, she loves because they make Nick Nick. However, though you ship it at the start, the introduction of Reagan into Nick's life makes matters more conflicting. For me, Nick's obsession with Reagan makes him kind of undeserving of Jess for a lot of the series. He forgets how amazing Jess is, how loyal she is, how dedicated she is to him and her dreams. Yes, Kate, you're so right.
I
But
agree.
even as Nick is developing the Pepper Road Chronicles, he does not realize that the development of this series is really coming out of Jess's constant intervention, even with her teaching Reagan how to be a girlfriend, which is something we didn't really talk about, but Jess really did take a
No,
lot of the
she's
teaching.
really like the caretaker of those two.
She is. So onward. His blindness to Jess's amazingness is frustrating. Jess deserves someone who appreciates all that she is, as Robbie so perfectly points out. Nonetheless, this struggle back and forth is a big part of what makes their love story so real and meaningful. The struggle is the reason why you can't help but ship them. They're not the stereotypical happily ever after ending. They show that to love means to choose to love every single day, acknowledging the parts you love in the other and the parts you don't love, but choose to love anyway because they make the other who they are. Even in the final season, where Nick takes 50 years to propose to Jess, which pretty much, we see Jess continue to choose Nick. She may not like the way he does things, but she wouldn't have it any other way. For another way would mean a different Nick. And she loves Nick just the way he is, oblivious and all. Yes, thank you, Caitlin.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
100%.
I
That was
love
a
that.
great analysis of that, I think.
And we didn't
Um,
talk about Robbie either
no, we
yet.
didn't. Poor Robbie is left out
I
of
know.
everything.
That's literally his character. So.
And that was a whole weird thing. Like him and Jess,
Hmm.
like, weren't they related or something? Man. But yeah, so thank you, Caitlin, because you're 100% right. Like, I feel like at times Nick really, he struggled with understanding and appreciating Jess for who she was. But ultimately, we love them because they're imperfect. And we love them because
Right.
they choose to love each other, whether or not they're perfect
No
or not.
relationship
So,
is perfect.
no, absolutely. So thank you
All
for
right.
that.
So, with that, it is now time to reveal the topic for our next episode.
Yay, drum roll, please.
So, our next one will be on Elizabeth and Darcy. These
Yay!
two from Pride and Prejudice are obviously iconic in good and bad ways.
Yes, and they're one of my favorites, so we're super excited to share this with you. If you have any thoughts on these two, please reach out. We would love to hear from you. Our email is weshipitpodcast@gmail.com, or feel free to visit our website and chat in our forum on www.weshipitpodcast.wixsite, wixsite.com/weshipit.
Yeah, or you could also reach out to us on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. Please reach out to us. We'd love to hear you. Drop into our DMs, please. And if you like the podcast, it would mean the world to us if you would follow us and rate our podcast.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for listening. Who's that shit? It's Jess and Nick. Woo!
Hey, have a good one, guys.